Hi guys, a very warm welcome to all of you. Welcome to all of board. So today we are going to discuss various MCQs which are important for your ESI static part. So we'll stick on to ESI static. Number of questions that have been asked up till now, though it will be there that yes, out of 30 questions, only 2 to 3 questions have been there. But then, guys, can we really leave these 2 to 3 marks? No. These 2 to 3 questions? No, because these 2 to 3 questions, they are doable. Why to leave them all together? And we all know RBI is known for the bouncers. Up till now also, उसने कई बार ऐसा, even this year, phase 1, you can just see there was a change in the pattern. It can help, it can be there again as well. So that's where we should be ready about any kind of thing. Because phase 1 qualify karna, obviously, even qualifying phase 1 is very tough. If you are standing over here, preparing for your phase 2, why do you want to leave any chance? So that's where, this session is going to help. This is the first question. What is the difference between M1 and M3 in money supply? So just think about what is the difference between M1 and M3. I'll give you time to think. Tell me what could be the answer. You can just pause the video and you can think about it. And then you can just tell me what according to you is the answer to this. You know what is M0? M0 is the currency that is in circulation. Or currency which is there with the public or other deposits with the RBI, CIC. That's how I am going to write it now on. M1 FIC. What is M1? What is M1? M1 is currency that is there in circulation with the public, with the RBI, deposits and all. Plus, in this we are going to add demand deposits. We are going to add demand deposits. That is your current account, saving account. If M2 I have to consider, what is M2? In your M2, it is nothing but M1, the current account or the public, the currency which is there with the public or the RBI, plus the demand deposits, plus the deposits which is there in the post office. The post office deposits also have to be added. But then what is M3? M3 is nothing, but M3 is M1 plus the time deposit. So that means in M1, what comes is your CIC, the currency that is in circulation, plus the public deposit, plus the currency which is there with the public, plus the RBI, plus the demand deposit. What is the difference between the two? It is just the time deposit. That's the difference. So in M3, what we add additionally is the time deposit. That's how you reach M3. So that's again another thing that you can write. M3, sometimes it's also referred to as broad money. So if you see what is the difference, it is just the time deposits with the banking system. That is basically what you will write as a difference in this. I hope it's clear. Any trouble? Okay, we'll move on. What is a Phillips curve? What does a Phillips curve show? What is there with this Phillips curve? So I hope you have read about it. Phillips curve is basically a curve which depicts the what is the inflation, effect of inflation on your unemployment. So it shows the relationship between inflation and unemployment. What kind of relationship it is? It is negative it is negative relation, or you can write inverse relation as well. This is the curve that is being drawn, inverse relation. Which kind of situation actually negates or proves your Phillips curve wrong? Then I would say it's your stagflation. Stagflation is a situation wherein your inflation will be high and your unemployment rate will also be high. So in such kind of a situation, we say there is stagflation. Otherwise, in the economy, you would see that, if the inflation is higher, the unemployment will be less. When the inflation falls, the unemployment will be higher. So you can say that inflation, the required amount of inflation is good for any kind of economy. So Phillips curve, it shows the relationship between inflation and unemployment. Can I ask you, what does Kuznets curve shows? Or what does Laffer curve shows? Or what does Lorenz curve shows? These are certain curves that you might have read in your static portion. So Kuznets curve basically describes that when there is a change in the GDP or when there is change in the outcome in any economy, what is the environmental degradation that happens? Or what is the economic cycle that takes place? Environmental degradation means during the increase in your GDP for a certain period of time, your environment get degraded. The degradation increases. After a certain point of time, it is going to improve itself. In the Laffer curve, we talk about what is the increase or decrease in the tax rate, and with this increase or decrease in tax rate, how is it affecting any government's tax revenue? So, as per the curve, there is an optimum tax rate, that is where the government will be having maximum tax revenue. Less than this, government will not be having the revenue, that much revenue. And even more than this, the government will not be able to have that revenue. So that is your Laffer curve. Laffer curve basically tries to define or formulate a relationship between your tax revenue vis-a-vis your tax rate. Then we have Lorenz curve. Lorenz curve is a very famous curve via which you get your Gini coefficient value. If you remember Gini coefficient. So if you want to calculate your Gini coefficient value, you have to plot this Laffer curve, in which on the x-axis you have cumulative income, and on the y-axis you have cumulative income, and on the x-axis you have cumulative population. There is a 45-degree line that is drawn. That is the line of equality. Then the curve, the respective curve of any country is drawn. The area between this 45-degree line and this curve is what you call it as A, and between this curve and this is what you call it as B. So Gini coefficient is found out by A upon A plus B. This is your Gini coefficient value. You can find this Gini coefficient value only if you know what is this Lorenz curve. I hope it's clear. Moving ahead, what is M0, also known as? So we have discussed a lot about M1, M0, M2, M3, M4. I am waiting for your questions. Tell me what would be the answer. So M0 is nothing but your reserve money. That is the currency that is there in circulation, the currency that is in the hands of the public, or the deposits with the RBI. I hope it's clear to you all. The Keynesian view on fiscal and monetary policy. What was actually Keynes' view on this? If you remember, we had classical model, we have classical theory. I hope you remember this. The classical theorists, they actually focused upon that supply is going to create its own demand. Supply will create its own demand. And who said this? This was said by Say. Say said that, when we are going to increase, so while we are going to increase our money supply, the demand will itself be created. But then we know 1929 crisis. In 1929 depression, though the government did try to increase the money supply, government did wanted to put extra money in the hands of the public, but we all know the demand, we were not able to come out of depression unless and until we followed a new policy, new kind of policy, which is your Keynesian economics. In Keynesian economics, the focus was not on monetary policy supply, but was on government intervention. That's what you say fiscal measures or fiscal policy. So in this fiscal policy, when we talk about fiscal policy and all, what are we actually focusing at? In this fiscal policy, we focus more on the government interventions, and government has always said that first of all, you have to actively manage the demand. You need to create the demand. You need to put in money in the hands of the public in such a way that the demand is generated. And how can you do that? You can increase the expenditure on what? On infrastructure. When there will be more infrastructure built, slowly and slowly you will see that the demand will pick up. So that's where Keynesian view is. Keynesian focused on fiscal policy measures, whereas the Adam Smith, the older one, the classical ones, they were focused on monetary policy. I hope it's clear to you all. Anything if you want to ask? Otherwise, we'll move ahead. Which country was the first to adopt inflation targeting? We all know, in India, we followed the method of inflation targeting very recently in 2016. Before that, we were not having this inflation targeting framework. But is India the first country to have this? Definitely no. The first country to adopt this was your New Zealand. Somewhere around 1990s, it adopted this. And the second country to come up with this idea was your Canada. So in 1991 only, the second country, it was your Canada. Just 1 year after, Canada also adopted this similar kind of system of inflation targeting. If I talk about India, what kind of inflation targeting are we into? We are into flexible inflation targeting. When I talk about flexible inflation targeting, it means that we want to target the inflation between 4 plus minus 2%, wherein from 2% to 6%, the inflation is advisable. So this is a huge band. From 2 to 6%, there is a gap of 4%. Because of this large band, we say that what we are doing is flexible targeting of inflation. I hope it's clear to you all. You are able to understand this. And what is a rigid inflation targeting? As suggested by our Tarapur committee. So Tarapur committee was a committee that was formed to have current account or capital account convertibility rules to be formed. So, current account convertibility, capital account convertibility, if you have studied it, then well and good. But then if not, you please go back and revise the static portion. When I talk about capital account convertibility, in this capital account convertibility, what we are focusing on is, or this Tarapur committee said that you can only go forward with this capital account if and only if your inflation targeting stands somewhat rigid between a bracket of 3 to 5%. Somewhere in the countries, they also have inflation targeting as rigid as having just 2%. So, that's the kind of rigidity that is there. But in India, we would say it is more or less flexible because there is a band, there is a range of 4%, which is definitely flexible one. Let's move ahead and talk about the next question, which is, which of the following are not a part of your revenue receipts? I'll wait for your answer. Tell me what could be the answer in the comment section. Great. So, there are two types of receipt. So, government earns money via two ways. One is the revenue side, which is also known as your recurring side, which will happen one after the other. And then it's your capital side, which is non-recurring, which will only happen once in a while. Either it is going to create the asset or it is going to create a liability. So when I talk about, or it is going to reduce a liability, I should have said like that. When I talk about which of the following is correct, so that's what we'll be focused on. The correct option to this would be recovery of loans and advances, because these form a part of your capital receipt. It's once in a lifetime. So अभी क्या होता है ना, आपने किसी को you have given some amount to somebody, and that is now like, let's suppose India gave loan to Nepal. So Nepal is going to pay back the interest. Now this interest repayment is what you call it as revenue receipt. But when the whole loan will be recovered, the full amount will be given back. That is what you call it as capital receipt. Therefore, option number B would be the correct answer. Next, government spending using up financial and other resources that would otherwise be used by private enterprises is called as dash. What it is your crowding out effect. Government spending using up the financial and other resources, basically what it happens is, because when government spends, government will take the money from the pool that is already available. Now this pool could have been, this pool of money or credit could have been utilized by private firms. But now what is happening is public sector companies are taking up it. So in this case scenario, it will lead to crowding out effect. That's what it is saying. The N.K. Singh-led panel on fiscal responsibility, it was set up by the finance minister. It has suggested that overall public debt to GDP ratio of dash should be maintained by 22-23. This was your N.K. Singh panel. N.K. Singh-led panel, it was somewhere across 2017 that it gave this kind of a recommendation. But then what is the public debt to GDP ratio that it wants to have? It wanted to have 60%. 60% of public debt to GDP ratio it required. If I ask you, as per UNTAD or various other government report, what is the near about approximate debt to GDP ratio that India is having as of now? Somewhere across 82 to 85%. Various reports says various things, but yes, somewhere every report keeps debt to GDP ratio somewhat between 82% to 85%. So that's what is the case with the debt to GDP as of now. It is unsustainable, yes. Is India having a lot of debt to GDP? No. If we consider US and if we consider China, these two countries, they have even debt to GDP ratio which is going higher than 100%. 100%, 120%. So that's the kind of debt to GDP ratio that they have. So they have typically very high debt to GDP. India is still 80 to 85%, though I would say it's also higher, but yes, we can bring it down. Next is regarding the escape clause. So, FRBM Act in 2018, it had some amendment to it. Now, when this amendment was being done, there were certain changes that were done. What happened was fiscal deficit target, if we are not able to maintain, then what kind of activities can take place? So that's what it is asking about. Tell me which of the following statement is correct. You can just pause the video, or you can just you can tell me in the comment section what do you feel the correct answer would be. The terminology was innovated by N.K. Singh Committee on FRBM. Yes or no? Yes. So escape clause was added or was recommended to be added in your FRBM by N.K. Singh Committee. In fact, N.K. Singh Committee also mooted for the idea of having a committee being created, a fiscal review committee, so that it can also review that what it all is happening, the public debt review committee, so that it can see that why the fiscal deficit targets are not being met. But then, these were certain recommendations that were being put forward. Committee wala idea to, government didn't pay heed to, but yes, escape clause, government did attempt it to have it in the FRBM Act of 2018. The escape clause can be invoked by the states? No, it's not by the states. It is by the center only. And this will only be done after the, parliament is coming up and saying that, okay, there is this situation wherein maybe there is a national war-like situation, some national security threat is there. There is some war-like situation, or, we are changing some structural features of the economy. Structural feature means maybe in the coming days, we'll be having a direct tax regime. Maybe because of that, certainly for a short period of time, our fiscal deficit targets are not being met. So, us time pe, we can use this escape clause, or for that matter of fact, because of any other reason, 3% output. There in the output there have been a decrease in 3%. So in these kind of a scenario, what we say is this is what where you can utilize your escape clause. So somewhere or the other, this escape clause gives a clear commitment to return to the original fiscal target. Yes, Government of India is being advised that once you have breached your fiscal deficit, how you can come back to maintaining the required amount of fiscal deficit. So that is again a clause which was put forward by your N.K. Singh Committee's recommendation. I hope it's clear to you all. Anything if you want to ask? Otherwise, we'll move ahead and we'll talk about what do you mean by balance of payment always balance. Balance of payment always balance. So nice line to think about. But then tell me what could be the answer. I hope you have seen this balance of payment and all. Question aa sakta hai. Definitely, it's there in your syllabus. It can be asked. Tell me what could be the answer to this. Okay, so let's begin with this balance of payment. So it is nothing but the surplus or the deficit which is there in your current account. It will be balanced by surplus or deficit, in the capital account. So all in all, everything will be balanced. In your balance of payment, there are 4 things that you consider. So one is your current account, then it's your capital account, then it's your error and omission. And because, every country, in fact, if I talk about India, we have certain foreign exchange reserve. So that will also be considered. Now let's talk about it one by one. In your current account, you take into consideration the invisibles that are there. What are these invisibles? These are your net factor income from abroad, some private transfers, if at all they are there, that will be added. Or in the current account, you can also add exports. You can add import as well over here. So export and import, basically net import or trade balance, to write it in a better way. You'll write trade balance over here. If I talk about capital account, in the capital account, you will add, what all you have to add is, you need to add the foreign investment that is coming, the external commercial borrowing that you are utilizing to create some capital asset, or some debt which is there, some banking capital which is there. So all this will be under your capital head. So under current head, everything would be taken into consideration. In the capital head, everything will be taken into consideration. Then comes your reserve, or your reserve issue, your reserve use. So what happens is, certainly your foreign exchange reserve, it fluctuates because of the demand of dollars and all. So there is a fluctuation in the demand and supply thing. So that is going to create a change in your balance of payment. And then, because there are so many things that we are adding, there are so many portions that we are adding into current and capital account, there can be a possibility wherein at the end, when you have done all your current account, capital account transactions, reporting have been done, you might think that they are not coming equal. They are not being balanced. To make them balanced, this error and omission thing is being utilized. That's why we always say that balance of payment, always balance. Okay, moving ahead. Tell me the answer to this. Okay, I have maybe not formed the option, but we'll calculate it together. Tell me what could be the answer. Oh, even without option, you can tell me the answer. Okay, so here it's GNP at market price, which is given. You have to found NNP at factor cost. Tell me what could be that. GNP at market price and NNP at factor cost. Tell me what could be the answer. So when I say GNP at market price, and when we say NNP at factor cost, so what is the how you will approach it? So when I go from gross to net, I will be subtracting depreciation. And when I go from market price to factor cost, I will be subtracting the indirect tax that is there, and I will be adding the subsidy. That's what we have studied. So what I'm going to do is, first of all, in this value 5069, I will be subtracting depreciation 626. I will be subtracting the net indirect taxes 475. I will be adding the subsidies, that is 49. The answer to this, you're going to tell me in the comment section below. You are better than me in quants, so I feel you will be able to calculate it and tell me in the comment section what will be the answer. Next, when was the National Education Policy, NEP, in India last updated or revised? The recent update or revised, that's what we are asking about. When was it recently updated, or when was it recently revised? That's what the question is asking from you. Tell me what could be the answer. So I'm waiting for your answers, guys. It will be 2020. NEP 2020. So is it the first time that we are having this National Education Policy? Definitely no. We had National Policy on Education. We already had National Policy on Education in the year 1968. Then also in the year 1986, we had, this National Policy. And then we had this small plan as well, which was particularly focused upon your National Education Policy. But then why altogether we wanted to have a new policy? Because we wanted a holistic policy all out, which not only considers your portions of critical thinking, but which focuses not on rote learning, but on discussions, so that innovative methods can be devised. But it also focuses on questioning. So rote learning should also not be utilized in the question paper format. The examination format, that should also be the one that is provoking critical thinking. So that is your holistic thing. The other thing is, basically the education plan wants to focus upon vocational training as well. So whatever the education system is, it is in such a state wherein the industry feel that, they are not getting the talent that they were actually asking for. Whatever they are getting, it's not what was required. So that's why vocational training is one thing that was added in this NEP 2020, and that's why it was bought. The next thing it is technology enabled education. So tech-enabled education, tech-enabled learning, it's that what we are focusing on. If we talk about next, it is right to choose. So we all want to have a right to choose. We all want to make a choice. And this right to choose, basically it talks about that there should be flexibility in what you are choosing. There should be a flexibility which is there with respect to the course that you want to take and all. Then we have multidisciplinary curriculum. Wherein a science student can pick a commerce subject. That's also one thing. But then if I talk about what is basically this NEP 2020, what are the targets that it is focusing upon? So first thing first, it is talking about universalization of education, not only at preschool, but now this universalization should also go to secondary level. 100% gross enrollment ratio by 2030. For the higher education, the gross enrollment ratio they are focusing upon by 2035, it's 50%. 3.5 crore seats would be added in the higher education so that this criteria is being met. Next, it's your NEP 2020. It will be bringing your 2 crore out of school children back into the mainstream. New 5+3+3+4 school curriculum with 12 years of schooling and 3 years of Anganwadi and preschooling. Again, this is the next part. Then we have no rigid separation. So there will be no rigid separation between the academic streams, the extracurricular, vocational streams. You know, even your report card will comprise of everything. So up till now, what was the case was your report card just showed your grades in the subjects. Math mein kitna hai, English mein what you are scoring. But now on, it will be focused upon extracurricular activities as well. Equally, I would say. Vocational education starts from class 6th with an opportunity of internship as well. So this is again a good thing. At least those who are not interested in learning further, if they want to get into, if they want certain kind of skill so that they can get a job as soon as they leave class 12th or something like that, they also get the part of it. Then teaching up to at least class 5 should be in regional language or the mother tongue. So that's a good thing. More and more people will get incorporated and they'll be able to understand it better. In the higher education specifically, they want flexibility of subjects to be taken. Multiple entry and exit points should be there. So if there's a graduate, if at all, if I talk about these days, if a graduate, if somebody who enrolls in BA, BSc or something like this kind of a course, or BTech for that matter of fact, if they're not completing 4 years or 3 years of their degrees respectively, they'll not get a degree altogether. It will be shown that, they have done nothing in the last 3 years. But then, if a person, the new law says, allow that person to get a certificate, jitna bhi pada hai, whatever the person might have read, give them a certificate. So for that, we have academic bank of credits, which is established. It is basically to facilitate and transfer credits. NEP 2020, it advocates increased use of technology with equity. National Education Technology Forum will be created. National Research Foundation, which is Anusandhan Research Foundation, is there. It will be there to foster a strong research culture. NEP 2020, it emphasizes on setting up of gender inclusion fund and your special education zone as well. It will be there for disadvantaged regions and groups. Then we have affiliation system to be phased out in 15 years with graded autonomy to the colleges. National Institute for Pali, Persian, Prakrit, Indian Institute of Translation, they all will be set up. So, not only in your basic education, we are focusing upon regional languages or our scheduled languages, but also in your this higher education, we want to develop institutions altogether. Now, what are the targets? If at all a question comes on NEP 2020, let's suppose if not a MCQ question, there can be a descriptive as well, wherein you can use these things. So some of the stuff can be utilized in your objective as well, like 100% enrollment in secondary level by 2030, 50% in higher education by 2035. Remember this. We want to have 100% foundational learning and numeracy skill through National Mission by 2025. Universalization of education from early childhood care to secondary education. Basically, we want to align by SDG 4. What is SDG 4? If at all you can emphasize and tell. What is SDG 4? Sustainable Development Goal number 4. What it is? It is quality education. You need to remember all the SDGs, all the 17 SDG, ratifying it. Like we cannot escape these. Ye yaad karna hai. And these SDGs will be very helpful even in your essay writing, in your answer writing, because you can quote it anywhere. These 17 SDGs, they actually have everything and anything to it. They focus on your socio-economic development, even beyond that. They focus on environment as well, directly. So, no matter if a question comes on sociology or some social aspects, some social justice, or a question comes on economy part, or a question come on environment part, clean energy, sustainable energy, in fact, on peace as well. There is a portion of sustainable development that focus on this part, even in developing of industries and other things. So that's why I'm saying 17 SDGs, ratto it. Bring back 2 crore children into the mainstream of open schooling. That also we have discussed. Teachers to be prepared for assessment reforms by 2023. For that, we have teacher training program, we have Nishtha and other such schemes. Inclusive and equitable education system by 2030. We also have this Madan Mohan Malviya teacher training centers out there, which are specifically focused upon these inclusive, equitable education system. Now, this is the next question for you. Very easy, I would say. This so you will be able to pick it up in the first go itself. Tell me what could be the answer. Great. So the correct answer to this is grade 5. This so we have already done. And from grade 6 and beyond, we'll be having our vocational training. So guys, there is this off that is going on. If you want, you can avail it. We also have all-in-one batch wherein we'll be discussing a lot of questions. Some questions will be discussed in the class. Some will be done by the MCQs, which is given in your course. You also have model descriptive answers, which will be included. Not only this, objective, descriptive, both kind of mocks will be provided. You will also be provided with the solutions of that. So, it is going to help you in your preparation. Next thing is, you'll also get notes. अब आपको लग रहा होगा 180 plus notes, how you're going to read, but सब कुछ नहीं पढ़ना है. Like today we were talking about balance of payment. If you are not able to answer that balance of payment, therefore, that means that is the portion that you actually have to go and revise. So go back, revise. Like we talked about monetary aggregates, the M0, M1, M1 and all. If you're not able to answer that, please go back and revise. Then we have descriptive English classes as well, wherein you'll be provided with model answer, model essays and all, which is very much required. I must tell you, English ko ignore mat karna, essay writing ko ignore mat karna altogether, because after all, English bhi 100 marks ki aa rahi hai, which is equally important. Getting 70, I would say getting 75% plus should be your target. I know English mein 75 plus score karna, you will think that, okay, it's very tough, but yeah, students are getting even above 70. So that means that's doable. If somebody can do it, we can also do it. Ideally, I cannot say as of now ki paper ka level kya hoga. I cannot say what you should be, what will be the cutoff. Before seeing the exam, nobody can tell. Even, after seeing the exam, we cannot tell, because phase 1 hi dekh lo, it happened in 2 phases, in 2 shifts. It's not wise enough to tell what will be the cutoff. But yes, एक चीज जो आप कर सकते हो वो ये है, ESI, aim for 75 plus. I know ESI paper will be very dynamic, very tough, but at least you can aim that. Finance and management, 75 plus, it's very much doable. Finance management paper, it's doable, you can attain that. In your English portion, try to have 75 plus. At least you should aim at 200 plus as a score. Only then, even if your interview doesn't go that well, interview mein kuch upar niche hota hai, I feel you will be good enough to go. The same way there is for NABARD as well. Abhi tak result to nahi aaya hai, but then theek hai, NABARD also is there. Next question. Which unemployment occurs when people are in the process of switching jobs? Like, let's suppose I'm today working over here, tomorrow I may be, working in some other organization. In this phase, in this brief period of time, we'll be having a time wherein we will not get a job, or maybe, there is a cooling off period. So that kind of period where I'm searching for a new job and at that point I'll be sitting idle at home, that is what you call it as frictional unemployment. We have discussed it a couple of times, so frictional unemployment will be the correct answer. Next is unemployment rate. What is unemployment rate? What is worker population ratio? If I talk about unemployment rate, it is the rate wherein people who are employed or people who are unemployed, those who were seeking work but they were not getting work, though they were mentally fit, physically fit, they were also ready to work on the prevailing wage rate, but they are not able to get the work, and divided by the labor force. What is labor force? The people who are employed plus the unemployed. That is what you call it as unemployment rate. So in the denominator, you will always write total labor force. In the worker population ratio, you will always write in the numerator the working age population, or the workers, the employed you can say, the employed divided by total population. So that's what your worker population ratio means. I hope it's clear to you all. Anything if you want to ask? Anything if you want to ask? Shall we start the next? This is the next question. Digital India Land Records Modernization Program. Consider the following statements. To implement the scheme, the central government provides 100% funding. It is basically a thing wherein government wants to digitize or modernize the land record. Paper-based land record nahi chalega, because we want to move towards paperless thing. So for this, 100% funding is to be provided by the center. Not only this, cadastral maps will be digitized. This digitization and all will be done via drones and other systems. An initiative has been undertaken to transliterate the records of rights from local language to any other language, so that this translation which is being done, it is very much legible, or it is understandable by the one who is not well versed in the language which is written. Aisa hota hai that I have a property, maybe let's suppose in Punjab. I may not be able to, I am not comfortable in reading Punjabi, but then the land records are there in Punjabi only. How can I say that, that is authentic or not? So I want that conversion, but that cannot happen if I have if the land record is there on paper. But the same land record, if it's in the digital era, if it's digitized, if it's there in the computer, I can straight away use any app. Maybe I can integrate it with Bhashini app, and I can translate it to any other language, maybe English, maybe Hindi. So that's what this Digital India Land Records modernization is looking forward to. What they want to do is, they want to create a system wherein everything, it is digitized. First thing, for this 100% funding given by the central government. They want to digitize the cadastral map. Yes. They also want to create a system wherein the record of rights will be converted from local language to any other language which is recognized by your Constitution of India. And how many languages are recognized? There are 22 scheduled languages plus English. I hope it's clear to you all. Anything if you want to ask now, please ask. Otherwise, this is the homework question for you all. Very simple, very easy. How many Sustainable Development Goals were adopted in 2015? And what is the target year for achieving all SDGs? With this, I also want to ask one more question. SDG 9 is related to what? This is again your homework. You have to tell me in the comment section SDG 9 किससे related है. One more thing that I want to confirm is, इसका आंसर निकाल के कमेंट सेक्शन में जरूर बताना. टेल मी इफ द आंसर कम्स आउट टू बी 4017 और नॉट, बट देन दैट्स व्हाट यू हैव टू टेल मी इन द कमेंट सेक्शन. अगर सेशन पसंद आए तो लाइक जरूर कर देना और चैनल को सब्सक्राइब कर देना. एंड वन मोर थिंग आई एम टेलिंग यू गाइज बिफोर हैंड, अगर फेज 1 क्वालिफाई हुआ है देन आई वुड से फेज 2 के लिए 0% चांस लेना, बिकॉज फेज 1 क्वालिफाई करना अपने आप में इट टेक्स अ लॉट ऑफ एफर्ट, बहुत मेहनत लगती है और इसके साथ में लक भी लगता है. थोड़ा बहुत लक तो उस दिन चला ही है, किसी का चला है, और नॉर्मलाइजेशन में तो वी ऑल नो व्हाट हैपेंस. बट एनीवेज आई वुड से कि जो भी कुछ है, इफ यू आर थ्रू विद दिस फेज 1, आई वुड से डोंट वेस्ट फॉर फेज 2 कि हम कर लेंगे, या फिर इवन डोंट गिव इट अ हाफ हार्टेड चांस. यहाँ खड़े हो, you deserve a lot. You know, these 900 approx students that are selected, I must tell you, you have nailed it this time. Don't leave your phase 2. अगर phase 2 में थोड़ी सी भी preparation में कमी रह गई ना, that is going to hurt you, like I must tell you, all through the year. So don't take a chance, give it all in. And this is, I would say, अगर कुछ नहीं भी करना है तो भी मॉक टेस्ट तो देना ही है. कुछ भी नहीं किया है तो डिस्क्रिप्टिव आंसर के 4 कम से कम आंसर रोज लिखने हैं एंड गेट इट इवैल्यूएटेड. नॉट ओनली दिस, हर हफ्ते 2 ऐसे कम से कम लिखो. कम से कम आई एम सेइंग मिनिमम. आई वुड तो ऑलवेज आस्क यू कि कम से कम 3 से 4 ऐसे लिखो हफ्ते में. अगर पूरा ऐसे नहीं लिख सकते तो एटलीस्ट एक ऐसे का टॉपिक उठाओ एंड थिंक कि इसमें आप क्या लिख सकते थे. अगर ये ऐसे आता तो आप क्या लिखते. तो आप ये भी सोच सकते हो. दिस आल्सो यू कैन थिंक एंड यू कैन यूज लाइक यू कैन टेक द हेल्प ऑफ समबडी who better knows this exam. किसी ने एग्जाम दिया हो, थोड़ा phase 2 दिया हो, उसे पता होगा कि what is the demand of the paper. थोड़ा भी पता होगा. They are going to help you out. Get your answers evaluated. That is must. And start typing your answer and see कितना समय लग रहा है. That's all from my side. Thank you and have a nice day.